Hey guys, it's Andrew from Collective Intelligence, and this is how to DJ inside of Ableton Live, part 2. So the first part will be available in the video description. The link will be there, or you'll see it pop up in the corner. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. But let's get started in part 2, preparing our tracks and then setting up our final effects. Ableton's opened up in front of me here, and we have it just where we left it. Set up, ready to go with our filter effects and our EQ effects. Now, some really helpful person in the comments section of the last video reminded me that the filters play up a little bit strangely when they're mapped directly to the parameters, but if you set up a macro knob, so if you map the frequency and resonance to a macro knob, they work much more normally. They work properly. So I've gone ahead and done that. So shout out to that person. Thank you very much. And you can see I've got my APC down here again. And we can play with the knobs. There's no trouble with those ones. Jump over to channel 2 just quickly. No trouble with those ones. Great. So I'm going to pull a track in and we're going to talk about warping the track to fit the grid. So let's pull the track in, and it's the same track that we're using last time. It's my remix of We Are Psychedelic, and you'll notice it just analyzed it, and it's gone ahead and done a couple of things. First of all, it's warped the track. Then it's put a BPM in there, 140 BPM. It's got it on beats, and if we zoom in here, we can see it's not quite starting exactly in time, but we're going to analyze how we think it's sitting on the grid. It's very typical of a lot of tracks to have introductions that are like 33 or 49 or 16 bars long, or sometimes even like 25, but usually they're divisions of 4 for the musical timing. So if we zoom in on the 33rd bar and we look where the kick starts, in this example, you'll see that the kick actually starts early. So that could be a problem with where the beginning is sitting here, right? It might not be, but we suspect it could be. So we're going to fix this, and every track that you import may have some weird little quirk. The important things to know and remember is, A, do you know the speed of the track? If you don't know the speed of the track, play it without any warping on and tap the tempo to it for quite a while until you are certain you've got the right speed. That's going to help you a lot. If you don't know, or if you can't do that, sometimes if you're purchasing your tracks on Beatport, you can go ahead and look at the BPM listed in Beatport. That's not always accurate either. But yeah, tapping or counting the time is sometimes the best way to do it. So you need to know your BPM because it needs to play as though it's not stretched at all, obviously, when you're at the speed. So this track, I know I wrote it, it's at 140 BPM. So let's go ahead and double click there. And we're going to right click that new node and we're going to say, this is where it should start. That's the 1 point. So if I go Control Z, here, it used to think that was the 1 point, right? This is the 1 point now. So it's moved along and we can double click on that and remove it. So if we zoom out from there and then we zoom back in on the start of our kick, is it better? Yeah, it's, let's say, perfect. Not that perfect exists, but it's starting where it should, right? Boom. Starts at the beginning. We zoom in on the 177th. We just check here as well. You see that it's looking a little bit like it's drifted off. So we can create a little node or we can do something different. I'll just unclick that. I'll go back. I'll right click this and I'll warp 140 BPM from here. I know it's 140 BPM. It should warp straight from there. We'll check whether that's changed anything. We're going to change this to repitch as well, by the way, for reasons I think I demonstrated in the last video. Cool. You'll see now that's in time, right? So that right clicking and saying warp 140 BPM from here forward, that it worked really well for us. And we'll just check this again that it didn't move that out of the, yeah, perfect. Okay, so this is in time, right? So if I play the track, and I turn the BPM on, not the BPM, the metronome on, it should be playing on top of the kick. Right. Perfect. So we're going to stop that, and we're going to say that now this track is warped. Now, some extra little tips for you. It can be helpful to write in the track things like the BPM for your own reference. It does say it down here. So as long as you make sure that that's right, then maybe that's good enough. You can put the key of the track in as well if you're going to be mixing. So for example, look at what I've got here. I've got 140 BPM, D sharp, right? So these can be helpful pieces of information. And then I'm going to mix the same track into itself. So I'm going to put that over there, right? Now I've got two versions of that track. They're both warped. They're both on repitch mode. And just to recap, if I didn't talk about why I'm putting on repitch, this is why I'm putting it on repitch, right? So if I put that on beats and then I quickly put my headphones on, it's on beats. I'm going to play the track, turn the metronome off, skip it in, right? Great. So if I take the tempo, listen to the artifacts that occur in the bass. If I turn it up, it's not smooth and nice anymore. If I put on repitch, pitches it up, but the kick and bass still sounds nice. Still maintains power. How does this track sound if it was a down-tempo tune? Cool. So, right, that's why we're using repitch. It keeps, when we're playing it exactly at 140 BPM, it keeps the pitch and there's no artifacts. It's the best quality. When we slightly pitch it up, there's just a slight variation in the pitch, but only really like hardcore people that know what the track sounds like and have a real musically tuned ear will hear that difference, right? So we've got two tracks set up on either side. We got the two filters ready to go, and I can give you a quick example of how I would mix it, right? So if I start playing this track and I just skip it into, say, here, or maybe like we'll get it through to here, right? And we're going to go ahead and pull down the volume on the second track, and we're going to start it playing. Let's say it's going to start right, started now. So I'm going to just let some of it come through. Now I'm going to nudge along the track that I'm bringing in, right? Because I'm about to have, yeah, cool. So I'm at the perfect time, right? So there's 2 bars until this break at 113. And now there's 2 bars until we drop, right? So I'm going to start pushing the volume up of the second track. And I'm going to start filtering the bass out of the first one. I'm going to filter it all the way out. Right. So you can still hear the second track. You can hear the drums playing in the track. I'm going to filter it back down again. Right, but I'm going to take it all the way out now. So I'll filter it all the way out. Cool, so that's how I would use it to mix, and you can see where we are in that track, right? And if I just transition back for you, I'll do it quite roughly, but you just get an idea. I'll take the bass out of the first track. I'm going to just pull the volume of it down a little bit, and then I'm going to slowly filter it back in. Cool, and when we get to 161, we want to have this first track come back in full again, right? Just because that's how we're going to mix it for whatever reason. So I'll push the volume up again on the first version. And this sounds very fluid and together because it's essentially the same track, right? So anyway, I'm going to start taking the bass out of the second track. be looking at the waveform of the second track now. And I'm going to pull the volume up of the bass and then push all the way up. Right? So you can still hear it. I'll just filter it all the way out, right? So that's what we're listening on track 1. And this is what's happening on track 2. And they're just very seamlessly mixing because they're perfectly in time with each other. And in this case, it is the same track, but you can make that work with whichever tracks you choose. And I'm using a combination of filters and the EQ here to select when I want the bass to be completely gone from something or what have you, right? So you get a bit of an idea of how I use that to mix. So we've warped the track today. Now we're going to quickly set up some additional effects for us to use so we can make our performances more interesting. And in this case, we're going to do some master effects. It would be more ideal for me in the future to show you how to set up individual effects that cover each channel rather than the entire master, but we'll do master effects today and then we'll do channel oriented effects in another tutorial. So the first thing we want a limiter, and we want the limiter to be the final stage. And just FYI as well, what I did is I changed these EQs to be maxing at 6 decibels, right? Because it was clipping a little bit that I didn't notice before. So we just need a bit of a ceiling because when I'm using the filters, they are adding a little bit of resonance. So they are boosting frequencies at points. So they're pushing them quite a bit louder than what they should be. So we want to avoid any clipping coming through. That's going to sound nasty. Right, so we're going to use a limiter and we're going to grab an auto pan and another auto pan. And we might use a beat repeat as well. And we'll grab a flanger and we'll grab a reverb and we'll grab a delay. Great. So we'll go through and we'll systematically turn them off, right? And what we are going to do now is we're going to go ahead and group all of these. So select the first one, select the last one. Actually, that's not the last one. That is the last one. And go Control G to group them. And I accidentally pressed that twice, so I'll just go back. So here we go. I can see the knobs, right? And I'm going to right click that, amount for the auto pan 1, amount for the auto pan 2 to macro 2, dry wet control for the flanger to 3. What do we want on this one? How do we turn this one off? We might leave that one a bit. We're going to put the dry wet on 4 for the reverb. We're going to put the dry wet for the delay on 5. And that's it for now. We'll come back to the beat repeat if we can think of a way that we can make that work normally. So we're going to rename this one and we're going to call this chain. That one's going to be side chained. This one's going to be the chopper. So it's going to be called chop. This one is the flange. And then this one is the verb. All right. And then this is the delay. Cool. And then we can go ahead and map that to the knobs that I've got here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Cool. So that knob is turning that auto pan on, but we need to set up the auto pan so that it's correctly functioning, right? So we'll turn the auto pan on. We'll start playing a track. Come back to the master where that effect is. Right, and so at the moment it's panning left to right. I don't want to pan it from left to right. I want to go ahead and pan it in a way where it's actually not panning, it's doing volume control, right? So I'm going to put it on a triangle, and then I'm going to put the shape to about 30 or so. I'm going to go ahead and hit the time. I'm going to put the time on 1/4, and then I'm going to invert. And then I'm going to phase all the way to 0 in this case, right? Put that around 40, right? So that's essentially pumping in a sidechain kind of fashion. Cool, so there's a little bit of an example there. So what we did is we increased it as we were coming to a point, and then as the track was about to drop, we let it back so that the full kick and bass could come through. So there's just a little example of how that one can be used. Next, we're going to come to the auto pan, and this time, again, we won't use it as though it's panning, so the phase all the way to 0. The rate on this one, I'm going to keep it 16. I'm going to keep this on a sine wave, right? So when I turn that all the way up and play the track, come to the master. I'm just going to change the shape. That's fine. Cool. I think that's good like that. So if I just filtered out the bass, so all that's doing is it's essentially sort of putting a tremolo on things at 16 quarter notes. Can do a bunch of stuff at the same time, right? Right, so it's kind of making it feel like it's vibrating. So that's a very nice effect. And we can use that in combination with any of them, right? So we'll turn the flanger on, we'll get the flanger going. So we could put the flanger toward the start, right? We want these effects to... I really like flanges, so I use them when I'm doing sweeps and stuff. So I could do something like this, right? I'm playing a track. I quite like to do stuff like that. Cool. And then reverb. Cool. Let's turn that on. We could say that we don't ever want the reverb to act on the low end. Cool. We can just turn up the decay a bit as well. Cool. So we can just have a little bit of an effect there that we can use when maybe when we're taking stuff out of it, when we're filtering. Can be interesting when used together. And then finally we got the delay, right? So delay is quite simple. We just turn it on. Right, so I just turn ping pong on, and then I'm going to filter it. So we can use a delay. I want the auto pan that's doing the gating to affect the delay. Yeah, there you go. So the order that you have these effects will definitely change the way that you can play around with them. Okay, so there's some master effects that you can use. We won't do the beat repeat, but now we'll do that in the other video. So we have the effect racks, and these two tracks are playing and then they're summing together and then they're going to the master, and then we can use effects over top of them all. And we can play around with that, and we can go deeper with it for sure. So like I mentioned, it would be ideal if we do channel 1, channel 2 with their own set of effects. So as we are bringing one track in, we can use the delay to wash one of the tracks out as it's leaving, right? So we can do all sorts of sort of DJ tricks that are typically done. So we'll work on doing that for the more advanced video, and we're going to do an advanced DJ video at some point. So these are the two get started videos. You're pretty much ready to go now. You can mix to your heart's content. I hope you guys found this very useful. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. That really helps it spread out into the world. And if you haven't already subscribed or consider it, thank you very much for watching. See you very soon.